Hey everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for joining Soul Trades. Hey Matthew, thanks so much for being here. I know today is Tuesday and it's not a usual Soul Trades day, but I've got Thomas Hunt who is here. He is a mindset and shadow coach, and he's going to talk about how to deal with anxiety. But he also mentioned too, he's probably going to go in a little more depth with it. But it is Tuesday night. Soul Treats is live, and I'm so excited. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Thomas so that he can introduce himself and we can get right into it. Thanks for being here, Thomas, all the way from Australia. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to get on and share and hopefully help a lot of people to learn how to deal and cope with anxiety. So if you guys are here, make sure you drop a comment saying hey, appreciate it. I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys and hey Matthew, hey Natalie. Yeah, looking forward to connecting with you guys and going deep into anxiety and what's really underneath it. So I do have a bit of a cough, by the way, recovering from a bit of a flu, so excuse that. So one of the biggest things that I have to deal with my clients and is anxiety, depression. A lot of these sort of things go hand in hand, frustration, anger, and how to deal with these very negative emotions and how to overcome the projections, the feelings, the experiences of this type of feelings. They're super uncomfortable, and a reason why a lot of people experience these type of emotions is because we haven't been taught as a society on how to positively and healthily deal with and cope with and overcome these type of emotions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about anxiety as what it is, and we're going to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to teach you some things that will be very beneficial for you guys to implement to start to overcome and deal with anxiety. And if you guys have any questions along the way, make sure you drop them in the comments. If you want, we can bring you on the live and we can go back and forth and you can share a little bit and I can support you in any questions you guys have. So let's get into it. So what anxiety is it's linked with fear. And the root of fear is it's a projection of a future potential outcome. So what I mean by that is anytime you're in fear, anytime you're in anxiety, it's because anytime you're in anxiety, you are in fear, by the way, if you're not aware. So anytime you're in fear, usually it's because there's something that you believe or think is going to happen in the future that may not even be happening or may not even actually eventuate. So what I mean by this, for example, if I can sit here today and my grandma's getting on a plane, I could be fearful that that plane may take off and it may crash and she may die, because that is a potential future outcome. And the difference between me being in anxiety and fear over that outcome is how I approach it and how I connect my emotions, my beliefs, and my thoughts to that type of outcome. So her getting on a plane and it crashing is very unlikely. And we all logically know this and our minds know this, which is why most people don't have fear or anxiety about flying, because planes have been deemed to be safe and it's very unlikely that they will ever crash. So how about things that happen all the time? For example, if you're at work and your boss calls you into the office saying, hey, can you please sit down? We need to have a chat. A lot of the time, that type of situation it has a negative emotions linked to it, negative potential outcomes linked to that type of scenario. And the reality is that you actually don't know if what the conversation that's about to eventuate is going to be negative or positive. And a lot of the time, what happens with anxiety and this fear is we build things up in our own minds. And that's where this huge, it's like another personality, this huge personality becomes the controller. So Matthew said, fear placed us in fight or flight and removes our ability to heal, forcing the energy away from our immune system. Yeah. So fear is actually, that's a nice point, mate. The fear and anxiety linking to that fight or flight, which actually links to our vagus nerve system, which is what the fight, flight, or freeze response essentially is. And I'm going to teach you some ways on how to neutralize your vagus nerve system and in a way reset it so you're not actually feeling these emotions that are connected to the fight, flight, or freeze response. So going back into the situation. So when we're thinking about potential outcomes, no matter if it's positive or negative, it's actually not benefiting you at all. And what's lying beneath this fear and anxiety are very subconscious belief systems. And these belief systems are created and formed between the ages of 0 to 7, which is when we are in a theta brainwave state, which is essentially meaning that we are sponges. Everything that we see, everything we hear, everything we experience in this age group is imprinted into our subconscious mind. After that age bracket, we move into our higher brainwave state, which is usually like the alpha, the beta. And the alpha and beta, most of the time we're sitting in a beta brainwave length, which is where we are right now. The alpha state is the bridging between the theta and the beta, which is like when you go into meditation or when you're getting a bit tired or sleepy, when you're sitting in front of a TV, or when you're driving and you get to where you're going and you don't even realize how you got there. That's the alpha to theta brainwave state. Brainwave state. And in these states, in the lower ones, the theta and the alpha, this is where you can move into to reprogram your subconscious mind and to create imprints that are either going to benefit you or are going to sabotage you. So being in a beta brainwave state, which is where we are now, and we react to things through our subconscious connections, our emotional connections to certain outcomes. So what lies beneath anxiety and fear is a core belief or thought that is associated and connected to a negative emotion or a negative outcome. So how I can explain this is when, for example, if I have a bit of anxiety about being on time, if I'm running a bit late and I'm getting really stressed out, I need to rush and force myself to get there on time, because this can be linked to something as simple as when I was 4, my mum was stressing out because we were running late and I wasn't putting my shoes on quickly enough, and I got in trouble and she smacked me or she yelled at me. And what happened was, in that state, in that moment, because she was rushing, because she wanted to be there on time, and we were running late, I received a negative or witnessed a negative response to that outcome or to that experience. We were running late. It was my fault. I got smacked. So now what's happened is it can, and these beliefs can stem from even one experience like this. It doesn't have to be reoccurring. So now what's happened is every time that I'm running a little bit late, I get anxious. I'm fearful. And the reality is that there's no real reason to be fearful or have anxiety about being late. If you're late for work or if you're late to meet someone, people are very understanding. You could literally call and be like, hey, I'm late. I'll be 5 minutes. I'll be 5 minutes late. I'll be 10 minutes late. Most of the time, it doesn't matter. But because of our negative connotation with that experience, we make up this fuss. Our blood rate, our blood pressure heightens. We get hot, we get sweaty, we have a nervous response. Our nervous system is working overtime because there is a negative connotation, negative experience that we subconsciously believe will eventuate if we are late. Okay. So with that, you now understand that something so simple can create this huge can really negatively affect how you experience things in your life. Because you can be late a lot, or you can not eat all your food. And you may believe that if you don't eat all your food, then it's negative, or you get in trouble, or your kids in Africa are starving and you're going to be wasting it. Or all these types of really subtle and subconscious things get imprinted onto us, which then negatively affect us for the rest of our lives without us being aware of it. Okay. So anxiety and fear is very surface level. So if there's anything that you take away from this seminar or this talk, is to look beneath the emotion. What is beneath this anxiety? What is beneath this fear? What is beneath this depression? What is beneath this anger? Why am I feeling this way? And actually dig deep. Okay. And if you're not aware on how to do that, then reach out to someone who may know that, may be able to help you. Because it is really important as individuals that we learn to deal with our own emotions, that we learn how to overcome and identify when we're in states of emotional imbalance. Because if we aren't aware and we don't know how to regulate our nervous system or our emotional responses, then what happens is we project. If I get angry at something subconsciously, I can project it onto other people. And I'm sure every single person on this earth has projected something onto someone else. Okay. So dig deeper, dig underneath, and find the root of this emotion, of this reaction. And a lot of the times they can be linked to multiple different experiences you've had as a child, or multiple different things you've witnessed as a child. But it's important to go to the core. Once you have identified the root of this negative emotional attachment, a lot of the time it gets transmuted and overcome just through realization. Sometimes it's a little bit deeper than that, and you have to do a little bit of work. You have to start to reprogram your subconscious mind, rewire it. And that's where going deeper into that, it's important to get the right support, because it's very easy to negatively impact your subconscious mind if you don't know what you're doing. So it's important to get the right help if you need that. So Do we have any questions before I get into showing you guys some little tricks and true freedom comes from self-understanding? Yeah, essentially. Because if when we understand ourselves, we are liberated from other people. And what I mean by that is when we don't understand who we really are, we're actually connecting to other people's projections, other people's programming that has been passed down through parents, through society, through teachers, through mentors, through bosses, people that we look up to, people that have taught us or trained us. They imprint their own insecurities, their own negative emotions, their own negative experiences onto us. So with understanding comes freedom. Yeah, self-understanding, self-love, self-compassion. It's a possibility to be truly free. As you hear these dogs going crazy in the background. All right, doesn't look like there's any questions. So what we'll do, I'm gonna give you guys a couple tips on some things that are going to be very beneficial to regulate your nervous system and to deal with these negative emotions and these negative connotations. So, best things, easiest things to do is cold therapy, cold showers. I do this every morning. I wake up, do my routine, I get in a cold shower. And what this does is it helps to regulate the nervous system. It puts the body into a fight, flight, or freeze response. And through that response, you can actually, as your body starts to acclimate, as your body starts to acclimate, you then move through and you transmute that initial responses. Okay, what we got? Lacey, I've had terrible time with anxiety for the past few months. I'm finally starting to get better. I couldn't even be home alone. It was awful. Yeah. So, Lacey, there's something beneath that. Okay. Even if you're starting to not feel that way now, there may be something in the future that will re-trigger that emotional response. So if you haven't identified what's beneath that, then I invite you to go deeper, because if you don't actually identify and transmute that negative emotional connotation from that connection, then you will continue to experience that throughout your life with different triggers that are similar to the core response. Okay. What was I saying? Right. Cold therapy, great one. Get in the shower. Anytime you're starting to feel anxious, overwhelmed, emotional, even with anger, frustration, any of these negative emotions which are connected to the nervous system, jump in and have a 30-second cold shower. Watch how differently your body will react. Watch how differently you will start to react. It brings us into our body, it centers us, and calms down the nervous system. Another great thing is breath work. If you don't know what breath work is, look it up. It's a sequenced breathing technique that you can use that regulates the body. It influxes the body with oxygen and allows us to regulate the nervous system and be present with what's going on inside. Meditation, I mean, you probably all know about meditation, but meditation is super underrated. And just have in mind, you don't need to do all of these things. There may be one of these things that suits you better, and you just need to find it. Not everything works for everyone. So don't just think, oh, I have to meditate because I'm spiritual or because I've been told that it's good for me. Like, you don't have to just do that. There are different things that are suited for different people. Okay. But meditation, super underrated. If you're not doing it, look into it. And I don't want to hear any of this I can't meditate nonsense, because everyone can meditate. It's just a practice. You have to get good at it. It's like anything. You can't expect to swim at the Olympics if you don't train to do that. So the same thing. If you want to get good at something, you have to practice. You have to train. You have to practice. Practice. So we got, cold therapy, breath work, meditation. They're the biggest three. Then you can move into self-expression through body work. And what I mean by that is like dancing. It's hitting, I don't know, punching bag or hitting pillows or releasing these emotions. Because with emotional release comes transmutation. When you release these emotions, you can actually center yourself and come back. And and the last one is journaling. And this is another super underrated thing that is actually extremely profound. If you take the time to journal and connect, because when we journal and when we're writing, it's actually taking away the connection with our mind to our hands. I'm sure if you actually have journaled before, you started writing and sometimes things come out that are just like you would never have thought of. And the reason is because our hands are not directly correlated to our thoughts, our mind. It's actually connected to our subconscious. So as we start to write, as we start to talk, and as we start to express ourselves, new information comes up, new wounding comes up, new trauma that you haven't been aware of before, new core issues. All these types of things can come up, and you can start to then identify, you can start to connect, and you can start to then understand where this is coming from and how to actually overcome it. So I feel like I've shared everything I kind of need to share in regards to that. So now's the time. If any of you have any more questions or comments that you'd like some insight on or some further clarification, let us know. And while we're waiting for anything else, just I want to clarify that this is a journey. This is not something that you will just immediately be able to overcome or to deal with. Anything that's worth anything in this life is about the journey to get there. I'm curious if you're aware of any German new medicine yet. Not sure what you really mean there, Natalie. Do you want to share a little bit more? German new medicine, as in like plant medicine or actual medication? If you're talking about actual medication, I don't believe that. Let me clarify. There are some things that may benefit you being on medication. I do not believe that anxiety or depression or any of these kind of clinically diagnosed emotional reactions should be medicated, because medication isn't actually, it's not dealing with anything. It's not getting to the root cause. It's actually creating a bigger disharmony in your body. And it's not actually, it's a band-aid solution. If at best it's a band-aid solution. So I don't believe medication is ever an answer for anxiety, for depression, for suicidal thoughts, or any of this type of stuff. Okay. The learninggnm.com website has an alphabetical listing of symptoms, and it explains what trauma created that certain symptom. Okay. Is that the German new medicine that you're talking about? Can you clarify that? is a different fundamental belief on how the health system works, and it has to do with the way you're explaining anxiety. Okay, cool. It's something I started researching. There's a scientific backup for it, and honestly, it makes a lot of sense with everything I've read and experienced so far. Cool. So I'll answer this question in a sec, Lacey, but let me just I'm just going to reread these in a sec. So Alpha lists of symptoms and explains what trauma created that certain symptom. Okay. I would be conscious of going to external sources to diagnose what what trauma has created certain symptoms. While it may be beneficial, the only person that will really know is you. That's why it's important to do the work yourself. And external sources, while they may be beneficial to increase your knowledge, increase your understanding of certain things, I do not believe that anyone should ever go to external sites or people to tell them how they feel. If that makes sense. So, like with the work I do, I don't tell people that your trauma, this symptom is because of this trauma. I support people in actually identifying it themselves and then transmuting that through the practices and tools that I use, if that makes sense. So I'll be cautious of going to sites that have listed symptoms explaining what trauma created certain symptoms. While it may be beneficial, make sure you're not using it as like gospel. That's my belief anyway. You don't have to listen to me, but that's what I believe. All right, Lacey said, have you ever heard of the DARE response? It helped me a lot. Lacey, let me know. I've not. If you can expand on that, love to. Matthew, I'll look into it. I'm assuming you mean the German new medicine. Yeah, I definitely am going to look into that. Yeah. Natalie said, yes. Cool. Matthew, you should look into it. While you're in fight and flight is when your body is actually sick under German new medicine philosophy. When you make the emotional release is when we physically exhibit the symptoms of sickness. So it's not really about diagnosing it as much as being conscious of being in a fight or flight, because you recognize what's coming after that. This one. Okay. So I think I understand what you're saying there, and I'd love to touch on this point you've said. When you said when you make emotional release is when we physically exhibit the symptoms of sickness. Yeah. So I'll give you guys something to think about here. So 1% of all people born are born with a genetic disease. That means that 99% of us actually inherit it through our beliefs, through our environment, through our actions, through what we experience in this life. So when it comes to physically exhibiting the symptoms of sickness, a lot of the time our mind creates that, our bodies create that sickness or that illness within themselves. And that's because our mind is in a state, and Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you know that, he goes really into this with epigenetics and all this kind of stuff. And I suggest that you guys have a little look at that. But what he talks about is how our genes create proteins, and our proteins can be upregulated or downregulated due to our emotions and what we're experiencing. So that means that if we're constantly in a negative mindset, we're constantly feeling negative or experiencing negative things, or our environment is negative, then our genes then create downgraded proteins, which then create disease, which then create cancer, which then go into create all these different types of things. So we physically exhibit the symptoms of sickness. That is all a part of our state of being. That's my belief, and there's a lot of research that backs this. Okay, so I believe it's really important for every individual to actually do the work through themselves to identify and to overcome these state of beings, these imbalances in state of being. I don't know enough about this German new medicine philosophy to talk much further on it. I'll do some research and I'll see what comes up, but I believe it's from what it sounds like, it's kind of similar to these kind of researchers. So let's move on. Yeah. When I read a bit about it, I understand. It's a different philosophy. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So yeah, and I'll also touch on this point. While you're in fight, flight, or freeze is when your body is actually sick. So, as I mentioned earlier, that response is directly linked to our vagus nerve system. And our vagus nerve system goes through pretty much our whole body. So, the best way to explain this is when we are in this response, we'll say I'll give an example. I don't know, like you're getting chased by someone. You're getting chased by someone. You're scared. You're in flight. Sorry. And what happens is the blood, the oxygen gets pushed into your what are these limbs, your legs and your arms, which then allows you to run faster, for example, or fight better. And what happens is because of this lack of oxygen and blood circulation to the heart and to the mind and to your brain, you have a dissonance in your mental clarity. And this is why like cortisol is linked to this as well. So if you're constantly living in a state of stress, then that actually creates dis-ease in your body, which then creates disease. So living in a constant state of this fight, flight, or freeze response, which a lot of people do with high pressure jobs, and even like lots of mums that have lots of children living in very stressful environments, domestic violence, toxic relationships, all these types of things. And when you're constantly living in that sort of environment is when your body is, which is what you're saying here, what you said about this philosophy, is when your body is actually sick. That's what happens. It's exactly what happens. The vagus nerve system overloads, your body shuts down, your body starts not reacting, your brain and your mind doesn't have the oxygen and blood flow it needs. So then you start to spiral downwards and you start to not eat properly, not think properly. Then you start to experience sickness. You start to experience cancer, disease, whatever, leaky bladder, like all these types of things, just because of simply the environment that you're in and what you're experiencing, and you not regulating your nervous system. Okay, got a few. Let me read it. Oh. What are your thoughts on panic attacks? My theory is that it's like daydreaming when you drive a car. You've stayed in worry for so long that you've automated the process. That's an interesting way to describe it. So my thoughts on panic attacks is there's always something under it, and that's with anything like this whole talk about anxiety. Panic attacks is no different. There is a trigger that is causing you to experience panic attacks. So what's underneath the panic attack? What was the trigger? What's the core of this? It's a wound. It's a negative emotional attachment, which then creates us to hyperventilate, to high blood pressure, to overload our nervous system. And it's almost always linked back to the first 7 years of life. So my thoughts on panic attacks is you don't need medication. You need to go to the root of the cause and release it at the root, and stop Band-Aid solutions with the medication, with the therapy, with all this type of stuff. Learn to heal from within. All right. Okay, Natalie. Excuse me. The psyche, brain, and organ are all connected as one. And when the psyche perceives a threat to the being, and the brain relay shows a kinetic ring. Perceive the threat to being, the brain relay shows a concentric ring formed in the brain according to what threat occurred. When the threat is resolved, the symptoms appear to heal the body even stronger than before. When the threat is resolved, the symptoms appear to heal the body even stronger than before. I'm just going to read this again. All right, let me start off with the first part. The psyche, the brain, the organ are all connected as one. Yeah. So everything in our body, it's all connected together. It's all woven together. So yes, I believe that. Yep. And there's proof in that as well, scientific proof. Okay, so when the psyche perceives a threat to the being, the brain relay. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so I agree with that. When the threat is resolved, the symptoms appear to heal the body even stronger than before. I don't personally really agree with that. I think it's because okay, let me explain. So you're saying when the threat is resolved, the symptoms appear to heal the body even stronger than before. Okay, so what is a threat? Because to you, a snake on the ground may be a threat. It may be a spider. To me, it could be drowning in water. So when the threat is resolved, because the reality is that threats are only what we believe them to be in our mind. It's only what we've been programmed through the first 7 years of our life. So I don't super agree with what you're saying. When the threat is resolved, the symptoms appear to heal the body even stronger than before, because unless you're dealing with the call and the threat is never actually resolved, your 3D reality, what you're experiencing, it may not be there anymore. So you may not be experiencing it, but internally in your body, there's still a threat. There's still a belief that there's a threat of some kind. So until you actually deal with that, your body and your mind will always be thinking that XYZ is a threat. Once you overcome that and heal that, then I can agree with, your body, you heal your body stronger than it was before. Yep. But until you deal with the core, your body's still holding it. She sent me a link about anxiety attacks. Cool. I'll have a look at that. Matthew says, totally agree. Don't believe in meds. Yep. Me either. And to be clear, I'm someone who has suffered with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. I've been all there. I've experienced everything. And I'll tell you right now, I don't believe in it. And I don't think they actually benefit. Okay, Natalie, trauma, overwhelm, everyone perceives threats differently. Exactly. It's what we believe it to be, right? Because through what we've seen, through what we learned, through what we've experienced, everyone perceives different things differently. So when we're perceiving a snake as trauma as a child, we'll experience it as trauma now. Until you overcome that, you're going to continue to experience that. Just like when you lift weights, you are ripping the muscles apart, and then they heal themselves even stronger. The symptoms are doing the same thing. Whoops. Oh, yeah. There you go. The symptoms are doing the same thing by healing us stronger, like a scar, for instance. Okay, but scars are actually weaker for that. When you lift weights, you're ripping the muscle apart. Yep, it heals itself even stronger. Yep. It actually doesn't heal themselves stronger. What that's doing is it's just separating the fibers so more fibers can grow. It's not actually making it stronger. It's putting more density, putting more muscle mass in there. So it's not actually making it stronger. It's creating I suppose in a way, but it's actually creating a density. It's like this anything with repetition. The symptoms are doing the same thing by healing us stronger. Maybe explain on that a little bit more. I don't really agree with that sentence itself. The symptoms are doing the same thing by healing us stronger, because again, symptoms are there to help us identify the root. So symptoms aren't actually healing us stronger. They're helping to identify the root cause of the trauma. So yeah, I don't really agree with what you're saying there, but that's, again, my opinion. I think that's a good point to bring up, though. Symptoms are symptoms. They're not there to be anything more than that. They're there to help identify what's beneath or what's the cause. So symptoms actually don't provide anything except for signs or directions, for example. Looks like looks like that's about it then.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for all your comments there. Great.
Yeah, really appreciate you expanding my awareness about the German new medicine. Definitely going to look into that. It's been a really nice chat and interactions.
And thank you so much for being here, Thomas, and helping people who are on the feed, but also people who will be watching the replay as well. in regards to anxiety. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I know it's not a usual time for us, but Thomas is in Australia. Whereabouts are you?
Near Brisbane, so like the East Coast.
East Coast.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for your support, everyone. And I do have Thomas's Instagram down below. If you'd like to get connected with him, definitely give him a shout. And I thank everybody for being here tonight. And Thomas, I'm just going to end the broadcast. And when I do, we'll be backstage in just a few moments. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, your energy, and I love you. Have a great night.
Oh.